Good morning, and thank you for joining us today for the Pre-State Allocation Board presentations. Just wanted to let you know that our State Allocation Board today is at 2 o'clock, and there has been a room change. The new room is 112, room 112 at the State Capitol at 2 o'clock. So our first topic is to discuss our funds available. We've had some minor movement between October and December. We've released about $47.4 million in funds, some minor fund releases, mostly in the March bond sale, the 2010 bond sale. And our pie charts show the remaining bonding authority for Proposition 1D, 55, and 47. Currently, we have apportioned about 92.6% of those bond funds, and right now remaining bond authority, we have about 2.6% left. The chart, or the kind of reddish color, is what we have in unfunded approvals, and that represents about 4.8% of those bond funds. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Michael Watanabe to continue our presentation. Thank you.
Okay, what we'd like to do is highlight some of the items for this month's agenda, starting with the priority funding apportionments, and then we'll talk about the current certification round and what to expect for the upcoming certification round. Then we'll talk about the unfunded approvals for the Overcrowded Relief Grant Program, and provide some information on getting ready for the next certification period, or submittal period, and then talk about AB 436. One more. So for the priority funding apportionments, the October 2011 general obligation bond sale provided $963.7 million for the school facility program. Our office worked with the State Treasurer's Office to identify the kinds of bonds sold for our program. We received almost $1 billion out of the tax-exempt bond category. There are conditions on those bonds which prohibit us from funding charter loans out of that. We did receive some taxable bonds which can be used for charter loans. If you'll recall, at the August 2011 board meeting, the board set aside $94 million for charter school facility program advanced fund releases. Unfortunately, out of these bond sales, we couldn't make the full $96 million carve out of these particular bonds, but we were able to get 46.2 out of that. So those are available immediately for charter schools to come in for advanced fund releases. This is on stamp page 231 of the agenda. Basically, we had about $17 million in cash available from prior bond sales that weren't allocated to other projects. They weren't enough to keep moving projects down the line for funding. That, combined with the bond proceeds, less the advanced fund releases for charter schools, leaves $935 million to fund projects for today's board. And in the last column, you'll see they are split out by proposition: $516 million for 1D, $353 million for Prop 55 projects, and $65 million for 47 projects. So as a reminder, each month we present the unfunded list in the back of the agenda book. The last column of the unfunded list will list the districts that have submitted certifications that they can come in within 90 days. So on this slide is the actual unfunded list with the yeses and nos highlighted that we go by. Now that we've identified the cash, we sort the entire list just to show us the ones that submitted yes, and that's what this list is. Within all the yeses, we look at each project, and what the yellow highlight is showing you is which propositions these projects receive their unfunded approvals for. So using those cash available down each pot, we just start going down each of the various columns. The fund projects, being consistent, we go by the SAB unfunded approval date first, and then the receive date second. What this screen is showing is a zoom in on attachment C for the item in tab 11 for this project, and what it's showing you is the funding for the projects in Proposition 47. We had we had $64 million available to fund projects in Proposition 47. Going down all the yeses in Prop 47, we fund $58 million in projects. The balance available is not enough to fund the next project in line. This is attachment D. This is highlighting the Proposition 55 projects being funded. We started with $353 million. Funding down the line, we were able to fund $351 million. We're leaving a balance of $2 million in this pot. And this slide is attachment E. This is all the Proposition 1D projects receiving funding. We had $516 million available. We're funding $514 million in projects. In total, we're providing apportionments for $923.8 million for 377 projects for 154 school districts. As a reminder, these school districts have 90 days to submit the fund release authorization to our office. It must be physically received with a wet signature by March 13th, 2012. Any questions on that item? Okay, Janice Schaefer will be talking to you about the next certification round.
Good morning. I had the privilege of collecting all the priority and funding certs for this round. And we decided to give a few little tips and ideas that would make it easier for you and I. But we're not here to point any fingers. However, I have brought a finger pointer with me, which has a laser light. And you have no idea how hard this was to get through security. So it's like I had to promise not to, bring in any aircraft to the Capitol and that kind of thing. So on to the more serious stuff. As you probably have guessed, there's only 29 more days until the new certification round. It starts January 11th, and it's going to end on February 9th. And note that the holidays and the weekends are included in that 30-day period. One of the problems we had this time was that a lot of people hadn't updated their new district representatives or, the people that can sign the certification letter. So it would be a wise idea now maybe to call your project manager and find out, how to update the cert. So, let's see. Move it, Josh, or move it, Nate. Now, to update your district representative, all you have to do is fill out the top section of the 5001. Go ahead and put it on the 5001. That way I can use my pointer. So you just fill out this section here. You fill out the district representatives and their phone number, email address, and down at the bottom all you have to do is sign it and date it. Okay. Now, some of the requirements for the certification put in the name of the school, put in the OPSC project number. It must be on district letterhead, and it must have an original signature. Now, one thing with the original signature, it makes it a little hard to tell with the new copying machines and things, which one's are original signatures. So maybe if you use a different color or something like that, it would be a little more helpful. It'll save me having to call you on the phone. Right, Josh? I won't use the laser light as to not burn out your retinas. So, okay, so now these are the certification requirements. You can actually, this is going to be on our website, and it's also in the regs, but you can actually just cut and paste this language into your letter. So, and then this is the rest of it. So, there we go. Now, optional, put in the district representative's phone number. You can put in the consultant's name and phone number if you'd rather we contact them. And then it's helpful if you have, and if you mention in your letter that you have an alternative person that can sign for you. If you're on vacation or something like that, sometimes these certifications have to be adjusted. So if you give us an idea who to call while you're out of town, it's great. This is the address that you need to send it into. And it's always a wise idea to monitor and track your delivery. Now, so when you're doing your certification, I know everybody gets anxious during this 30-day period that, we haven't received it, but send an email to the person who's collecting the certifications, and they'll respond to you as soon as they possibly can. You can leave them a message on the phone. One thing that's helpful too is go ahead and put all the projects on one sheet of paper or in that letter, just one attachment. You don't have to do an individual letter for each project. So as you can probably tell, I've been working out. So carrying these big binders full of certification letters was no problem for me. However, there's not, it is the state, and some people aren't as good a shape as I am. So if you don't want to save a tree, and if you don't want to save the ozone, save a workman's comp claim from the budget. So let's see, hand deliveries always go to the business services office. Don't give it to your project manager. Always take it down there so they can stamp date it for you. If you'd like a copy of it, also bring a copy with you. And then they can stamp that copy as well, so you have a receipt. Now, one thing that you shouldn't do, I guess I put up there don't, but let's just say shouldn't do, is don't send in the copies too. A lot of people have been sending in the original letter and a copy, and then they'll also PDF me a copy. And that really doesn't do anything for anybody except for jamming up my email. So you don't have to send in a PDF and stuff. You can send me an email. I'll send it right back to you saying, oh yeah, I have your cert and everything is just fine. And then here again, I mentioned the part about the individual letters for each project. Don't have to do that. You can put it all on one sheet. So, let's go. Now, another important thing is to know what your project's about. Some of the projects have a little different timelines. For example, Charter, for the advanced site and design part of it, Charter, since they had that carve out of the $94 million, they didn't really have to send in a certification letter for those advanced site and designs. However, if they did send in a certification letter, you're now bound to that 90-day period. However, if you're going to send in a full grant for a charter, then you have to send a certification. So that one's kind of a little bit confusing. So you might want to call and ask somebody if you have any questions. The Overcrowding Relief Grant, those are just like SFP projects. You would submit a certification letter for all of those. Career Tech is a little bit different. For Career Tech, in order to get a fund release, you have to have let's see, what's that thing called? An acceptance letter from OPSC. And to get that acceptance letter from OPSC, you have to go to DSA and CDE. So when you send in the certification letter, you're bound to that 90-day period if you get funded. So you should have all these things taken care of when you submit the cert for a CTE project. Now, for financial hardship, you would submit a certification letter for a financial hardship project that you have on the unfunded list. However, you're also going to, if it comes to funding, you're going to get a review, a re-review of the financial hardship. So one thing is, this is kind of like, don't call us, we'll call you. So if you're going to get funded, we'll call you and let you know. But it would be helpful for you to have the package of papers for the re-review ready, so it would just go smoother for you and smoother for the financial hardship people to get you approved sooner. So, and that's pretty much the end of my presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Nope. Okay, we're good. Anybody want the finger pointer? No. Okay, Karen, I'll give it to you. You probably need it. You can take it next to specials meeting.
Well, good morning. My name is Brigitte Ball, and I'm going to be talking about the Overcrowding Relief Grant and what's going to be presented at the board today. As you know, we're in our 8th funding cycle, and we had approximately $419.5 million that was available at the beginning, and we had 20 applications that actually were submitted for ORG. Out of the 20 applications, there were only 3 that were returned, and we have 17 that are moving forward to be hopefully funded by the board. In the 8th cycle, 17 projects to be funded. There were $82 million that was earmarked for the 17 projects to be approved by the board, and 202 portables to be replaced within those 17 projects. If the board approves these 17 projects, there will be $336.5 million left to roll over into the next cycle, the 9th cycle. Applications for the 9th cycle, we're accepting them right now. The closing date for that will be January 31st of 2012. And if there's any funding left, funds available, if funds are available, the 10th cycle for the funding cycle, it'll open February 1st of 2012, and the closing date for that would be July 31st, 2012. And if there are still funds that are available after that, then we'll go back to the board with an item to see what the board would like to do with the remaining funds. Now, I just wanted to go over just a few tips about submitting your ORG application, because we are trying to expedite applications as quickly as possible, and a lot of times we get snags because of just different things that happen. One of the things that you want to make sure is you want to make sure that your application includes an ORG site. We've, have experience where the application wasn't even on the CDE list to be funded, and it's really important that you go to the CDE website, which is listed up there, and check to see if you have an ORG, if your project, or your school site is on the ORG site at CDE. Make sure that you submit your application, your 5004, the number of classrooms in lines 2I and 3, make sure they match, because sometimes on the 5004 on the front, one section may have 10 classrooms and the other section may have 12, and they should have the same amount of classrooms in both areas on the application. So please make sure that you do that. Make sure also that the CDE letter, because a lot of times the CDE letter will change. Sometimes the number of classrooms may change. Something about it, what you're doing may change, and it's really important that you make sure that you bring that most current updated CDE letter to us. So, make sure that you get back in touch with CDE and get it updated and submit it to us. There are times when districts submit hybrid projects, which are projects that include ORG, also modernization or new construction. It's really important when you submit your ORG application that you, on your cover letter, identify those other projects, the new construction or modernization. And the reason why is because when our plan verification team looks at the plans, a lot of times they don't just see the ORG project, they may see new construction or modernization, and it's confusing because it hasn't been identified as coming forth. And it's really important for us to know that, because we do prorations with our projects. Make sure that the plans delineate whether the portable will be demolished or relocated. Universal turn is removal. A removal can mean that you're going to remove it off the premises, or it can mean that you're going to demolish. We really would like for you to identify if you want it demolished, to actually say that. Don't say removal, because then we'll have to come back and ask you what exactly did you mean. And for demolition, we do pay for demolition, whereas we don't pay for relocation. So it's really important that you are very clear on your plans whether you're going to demolish or relocate. If you're using the ORG site, please provide an updated site map, because a lot of times you may use ORG sites from another area, and we'd like to see the map of what's being removed. That's really important for us, and would appreciate if you would provide that for us. Make sure there's enough portables also on your site that you're actually using in reference to ORG, because sometimes you may have used portables from that site for another project, and you may not have the balance that you think you have. So make sure that you are tracking that. Overall, the bottom line is that the application needs to be clear. The more that you provide to us, the easier it's going to be for us to get it through. It is our job to make sure that we get you everything that you're entitled to as a district, but it's also very important that we have the elements and the information that we need in order to process the application and do it expeditiously and do it well. Any questions? Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Brian Odell with the Office of Public School Construction, and there's a board item today that would approve regulations to implement AB 436, which is what used to be referred to as a LCP, but now it's Prevailing Wage Monitoring Requirements. There's a 50-page board item that's been summarized on 2 slides. The new regulations and the new statute apply to any public works contract that's been signed after January 1st, 2012 that receives state bond funds. So that would be every SFP project where the construction contract was awarded, not signed, but awarded by the board or superintendent after January 1st of the next year. And the way it will work is districts, according to the DIR regs, districts will notify the Department of Industrial Relations when the construction contracts are awarded, and then the DIR compliance monitoring unit will directly monitor for the prevailing wage requirements for the project, except for, and there's 2 exceptions that are in statute. The first is districts that have a previously approved labor compliance program. So if you have one that's approved, an internal program today, then that would be one option for these projects. If you don't, by January 1st, 2012, DIR won't be approving any new programs. The second exception would be districts with a collective bargaining agreement that contains criteria detailed in Labor Code Section 1771B3, which basically is a CBA that would bind all of the contractors on the project that are doing work, and that there's provisions for prevailing wage requirements. The Department of Industrial Relations would be the authority to compare your CBA or PLA, as it's sometimes called, to make sure that it meets those provisions. Districts would pay the CMU or DIR for the services that are actually provided, so an invoice will be sent, and the total invoices for the project won't exceed 1/4% of the total state bond proceeds. So that's how the program will work. Move to the next slide. So what our regulations will do is first provide a grant equal to the state share of that cap. So we looked at what would be the maximum amount that the fees could be, and then took the state share, whether it's 50% or 60%, depending on the program. It will also require districts to enter the contract date or dates, their award dates, on the 5004 or any of the funding applications that are submitted to OPSC, whether it's CTE, joint use, whatever the case may be. That's why the item is so big, because we had to put these provisions in all of the funding applications. It also required districts to submit, when they submit the 5005 fund release, then the districts would submit the DIR confirmation of the project notification, so confirmation that the DIR has acknowledged that they've received it. And also, until July 1st, 2012, there's an option, and that's because the program is new, It's up and running. We're still phasing in. And so there could be some issues. And so what could happen is districts could just provide a copy of the project notification that they sent to DIR. And that way there's verification that the process has started, and then DIR would pick it up from there. That would be at the 5005 stage prior to receiving the state bond funds. Okay. And that's all of it. Thank you very much. Who's next? Okay. Now comes Mr. Bill Savage.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Brian. And actually, I want to thank Brian and his team, Michael Watanabe, and everyone else for the really amazing work that they did on preparing the regulations for the labor compliance program and working with the implementation committee. Thanks, Brian. Great job. So we had 2 meetings of the implementation committee to work on AB 436 Solario. This is an important program. The State Allocation Board has made it very clear that they want to see these regulations implemented. They want to see school districts in compliance with these regulations. And so what we did for both of the IMP committee meetings was to have the Department of Industrial Relations there making presentations, listening to concerns from school districts, and interacting with our staff from OPSC so that we can begin to work together with our brother agency or our sister agency and make this a successful program for school districts, because, to be honest with you, we're heading into a new world here with Compliance Monitoring Unit and DIR, a new set of relationships. I mean, people who have experience in the program recall when the Department of Toxic Substances Control, for example, became a part of school processes, and now we have DIR assuming some similar roles. So we had some good meetings with them. OPSC, and in the course of our work at the Implementation Committee, we looked at a number of different ways to implement these regulations. Just as an example, we looked at the possibility of a direct deposit, if you will, to DIR, where the OPSC would send the funds directly to DIR for the cap, and then there'd be some auditing and adjustments in that and a relationship between the two agencies. What we're proposing to take to the board, however, is that the funds for LCP would go to the school district, because the school district has a number of responsibilities under the legislation as the awarding body, and they have the responsibility for prevailing wage compliance and monitoring. And so the proposal that is going to the allocation board sends the state share of the funds to the school district. The school district is responsible to register their project, each individual contract, with the Department of Industrial Relations. Then DIR will invoice districts, similar to what DTSC does as an agency invoicing districts. And then any funds that are left over, if, for example, all the funds are not used or invoiced, those would be considered project savings under this and could be used on any other high priority capital project unless you have a financial hardship district. So we have explored a number of ideas and options. I think the main thing that I want to say to every school district in California is we are entering into a period where you must register your projects with the Compliance Monitoring Unit. Even if you're using one of the exemptions, districts still have to file the DIR Form 100 in order to be eligible for state funding on their projects. And so you'll file your Form 100. As Brian said, you'll get a confirmation notice. We hope that in time that'll become a simple electronic process. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. But it's important for districts to note that DIR's regs are already in force. Our regs are going to the board today, and they may not be approved in time to be enforced by the effective date of the statute. Nonetheless, so we won't be able to fund yet. Nonetheless, districts must comply with the CMU regulations, and I think that we've heard loud and clear from the board. We want to ensure that districts are in compliance, and we don't want to have situations coming back where districts miss these requirements. And so that's What we've really focused on in our committee meetings is trying to make this somewhat difficult new process as clear as possible and as easy and simple to follow as we can. So why don't you go to the next slide, Nate? Thanks. We have another piece of legislation. We have an IMP committee meeting scheduled for January 13th, and we're going to be working on implementing SB 128 Lowenthal, which has high-performance criteria that relates to modernization projects and to CTE projects. So our team is working on that, and we look forward to that meeting. We may need to come back to the IMP committee with some minor updates to AB 436 once we get through the regulatory process, and we may have some minor cleanup items that would be brought by OPSC for that meeting also. So that's my report. Thanks. Any questions from the audience? Okay, hearing none. Yes. Oh, I didn't ask for questions from Mr. Smoot. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I just can't help myself.
Okay.
Bill, the issue of OPSC regs, SAB regs not being in place by January 1st, is the district still going to be required to follow the process of those regulations and filing applications until they are, from January 1st until they are approved?
Under the labor code requirements and the regulations for DIR that are in force, districts must register their projects. If they sign a contract after January 1st, 2012, they must use the DIR form to register their projects if they're using state bond proceeds or in some other limited areas. For example, if they have a design-build project, they must register it.
No, I wasn't talking about the DIR regs. I realize that they're in place. I'm talking about the requirement that you have to submit a documentation with your application to OPSC for a project. That regulation won't be in place on January 1st, but our district's going to have to follow that requirement.
Well, I think that if a district, let's take a district that gets funding today, at our board meeting today, and if they enter into a contract after January 1st, 2012, we would anticipate that they would make their submission to DIR, get a confirmation, and include that in their 5005 to get their fund release, notwithstanding that the regulations may not be fully.
Well, that's all
I think that.
The district need to follow it, even though it isn't official. That's fine. I want to get that word out. So
Does the rest of my team agree? Yes, we need to comply, and that's the word we're trying to get out.
That's fine. I just want to make sure everybody understands that.
Okay. No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning again. We'd like to introduce the Project Information Worksheet Online Custom Report. It was launched, it says December 12th, but actually December 13th. I got the date wrong. So yesterday, we were able to post it to the OPSC website. What it does is it allows the public to access the entire PIW database, and they're able to enter custom report criteria, which we'll go through in just a minute. So when you go to the OPSC website, we have the blue accordions, and if you click on program data, then you click on the actual word program data in the first part of the paragraph, and it takes you to the next screen, which is talking about the PIW. It lists all of the charts there at the bottom that are presented in the board book that are from the Project Information Worksheet database. Those reflect projects that were apportioned since 2008. But if you click on the PIW Custom Reports tab, it pulls up this screen, which allows the public to access information from the entire database. So what I did was just for demonstration purposes, I put in projects that are approved from January 1st, 2005 to December 13th, so that was yesterday, 2011, that are in Sacramento County. And then I clicked on Continue. You see other criteria that's listed, and this is what comes up. So we have the project funding, we have project expenditures, and all of the project expenditures do come from the Project Information Worksheet for the projects apportioned during that time. And then if you scroll down, just underneath those other charts, we have facility component types and square feet of facility component types for those projects. And below that, the number of outdoor facilities and dollars apportioned by proposition for those projects. And below that, at the very bottom, it lists the number of pupils housed. Footnote, that's based on the 17071.25 pupil housing standards. And in this case, there was about 11,500 pupils housed for 12 projects. So quite a few for that period of time. And if you click on link to individual projects, that you get a list of all of the projects that the PIWs are captured in all of the data that was presented. And if you click on one of the projects, it goes to the individual PIW data for each project. So you could zero in, you could run a search based on a very specific project, or counties, districts, all different types of options. And again, this is available. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Now we'd like to turn our attention to Department of Education, and I'm sorry, I don't know your name. I apologize. Kathleen, thank you.
Well, good morning. My name is Kathleen Seaborn, and I'm from the Facilities Division over at the Department of Education. Last month, I believe Fred spoke briefly about the implementation of the Federal Green Ribbon Award Program. So today, I am going to, we can go one more. I am going to provide you with some additional details on that program and give you an update of where CDE is heading. Beginning in September, California accepted the USED's invitation to participate in the pilot year of this program. And this award is designed to recognize schools taking a comprehensive approach to greening their schools. This comprehensive approach asks a lot more of schools than just conducting a lot of fun green activities with the students. It's rather, the intent of the program is to integrate environmental and health impacts with environmental learning activities. Okay, next. Now this year, the feds asked for a two-step process. The first step is to complete and submit an application to CDE. Then, if a school is selected as a state nominee, CDE will conduct a site verification visit and then collect additional information that will be included in a nomination packet back to USDE. Now, USED informed us that each state may submit, and here's where it gets interesting, up to 4 nominees. If submitting more than one public school, one must be a school with at least 40% of their students from disadvantaged backgrounds. If submitting 4 nominees, then one must be a private school. The USED then may award up to 50 schools nationwide back in March for that pilot year. So with regards to the nomination of a private school, we are coordinating with the California Association of Private School Organizations and their executive director, Ron Reynolds. And CAPSO will be providing the private school nominee to us, and then we will forward with our other 3 nominees to USED at the deadline. Now, this slide provides an overview of our activities the last 10 weeks. And you can see that we were under an extremely aggressive timeline. And while there was some flexibility provided to the states in developing our state application, CDE took the approach to align as close as possible to the framework and sample application provided by the feds. Yet at the same time, the administration, our administration, believed that it was important to meet with all the various associations, state and federal agencies, to discuss specific criteria in the application and to seek input before then finalizing our state's application. So we were involved in a lot of stakeholder meetings the last few weeks. So here we are. You can see we're mid-December and we're right on target, knock on wood. We anticipate posting the application online the final week of December or the first week in January. All the school applications will be due back to us on February 17th. And our California nominees, those 4, will be sent to USED by March 22nd. So now let's get into some detail of what that application looks like. The award program focuses on 3 goals that were developed by the feds. Applications will be scored on progress towards accomplishing these 3 goals. We've got net zero environmental impact, net positive impact on the health and performance of students and staff, and 100% of the school's graduates are environmentally and sustainably illiterate. Literate, not illiterate. Now, these 3 goals have been labeled the 3 pillars of this award program. So we're going to use those words back and forth. And while these goals or pillars are lofty, and as our different stakeholders looked at these goals, it's the intent of USED to create a target for schools to aim for over the next several years. So now let's go into some of the individual pillars or goals. Under each of the pillars, there are sub-goals, or what the feds are calling elements. So if you look at the first pillar, environmental impact and energy efficiency, we have 4 elements. The greenhouse gas emissions, to improve water quality, efficiency, and conservation. Can we go on? To reduce solid waste production, and to expand the use of alternative transportation. So we're covering a lot of area just in the one pillar. With the second pillar, healthy school environments, there are 2 elements, and that's to provide an integrated school environmental health program and to provide high standards of nutrition, fitness, and quality outdoor time for both students and staff. And then under Pillar 3, environmental and sustainable education, there are 3 elements: to provide an interdisciplinary learning about relationships between environmental, energy, and human systems, use of environmental and sustainability concepts to develop the STEM content knowledge and thinking skills, and then to also create civic engagement skills in the areas of environment and sustainability. So then, we were working on our application, and then we just received word Tuesday that the federal group has changed the whole scoring rubric. So we are now in the process, in the last 2 days, of meeting with our groups again and adjusting our state rubric to match the USED. So as of this hour, the scoring of the pillars will be the following: where there was a little bit more weight with the environmental literacy, Pillar 3, you can see that they're more evenly distributed now, 30, 30, 35, with the inclusion of some cross-cutting questions at the end of the application. So again, schools can demonstrate that we're not just doing really fun, cool student activities, but we're really trying to integrate with a plan on how we're going to teach students to go beyond fun activities to becoming civic participants in our communities. So then, this week, we're then, in adjusting our scoring rubric, we're also in the final stages of designing a website dedicated to this program. So the application this website will include an online application, which will be our first attempt at that, as well as several resources and matrices that the schools can go to gain guidance in filling out the application. And we anticipate that our future website, it's all in storage contribute right now, ready to go, will be up at the following address. However, since you don't have copies of this, if you are interested or you have schools or districts that you're working with who you think might be interested in applying for this award, if you go the fourth week or the final week in December to CDE's main website, and we have a column, What's New, there will be a top link, Green Ribbon Award Program. Click on that, which will then click to this website, which will then open up all the resources and applications. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we anticipate the site going live right before or right after the holidays. We're hoping in the next 2 weeks. And with that, are there any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
All right, good morning. A brief presentation from DSA regarding DSA updates. Probably most important update of the month is the appointment of the new state architect, and we'll be transitioning probably throughout the end of this month, and welcoming the person into DSA. And we today at the State Allocation Board are going to be providing an update on the DSA role in the implementation of the seismic mitigation program and the new regulations adopted by the board in June. Chip Smith will be presenting, and as part of our item, we will be providing an update on the applications that we received. This information is dated back to December 1st, 2011, so as of today there could be a few more applications that we've gotten, but the bottom line is that our Phase 1 review, which is the verification of eligibility, which is the step performed using our evaluation template, that phase of the process has received 66 applications, because there's an application per building, and those represent 8 school districts, so quite a bit of applications per each school district, and we've issued 47 concurrence letters as of December 1st. So the ones that didn't get a concurrence letter, they were either incomplete, and in that case, we communicate with the applicant on what needs to be done to be completed, or there were a handful of applications that were actually ineligible because the structural analysis that was performed was done incorrectly. So we again issue a letter that explains what is the reason for the report being ineligible, and we return that to the applicant. So that's the status of the program to date, and we provided a short item that attempts to kind of summarize in simple terms the DSA method of implementing this program. Go ahead. And then I wanted to talk briefly about a new publication that we're working on. It's our Bulletin 1108. 11 stands for year 2011, obviously. The bulletin is not yet on our website, but it will be shortly, so I wanted to briefly talk about it because it will probably be on our website within a week from today. This is a result of our work of DSA working more closely with the State Fire Marshal and also representatives of local fire authorities. I spoke throughout the year about that work. Our fire life safety review has quite a number of issues and a lot of interaction with the local fire authorities and State Fire Marshals, so we've been trying to work with them, and one of the issues that the local fire authorities have raised is that there's unclear guidance in the field on issues relating to occupant loads, especially in assembly occupancies, and neither the LFAs, local fire authorities, nor the districts always know what to do when there's a problem. And this bulletin does a couple things. It clarifies responsibilities, and it outlines in very simple terms on 2 pages the process for changing maximum occupant loads. And we developed this bulletin with the State Fire Marshal. State Fire Marshal formed a little work group for us, and we worked on the language together to where we It's a collaborative process. The DSA is issuing a bulletin as a guidance. We plan to discuss more issues with the State Fire Marshal in the future, so we may roll this information later on into some type of a guidebook. The types of problems that come up in the field after a project is constructed per DSA-approved plans could be either an occupant load sign is missing, and when the local fire authority does their annual inspection, they note it, and that triggers some type of an action, and this bulletin clarifies what that action is. Sometimes in rare circumstances, a school district has an existing facility, and it wants to increase the occupant load. So there's a process to be followed there as well, and we hope with this bulletin to clarify a little bit of that misunderstanding that currently exists. So that is, like I said, it's going to be numbered Bulletin 1108 and posted on our website very soon. Okay. And then I apologize for the typo here because I was obviously recycling last month's slide. The bin status reports that are posted here are not dated October 20th. These are December 2nd reports. On our structural reviews, we are meeting our target of staying below 6 weeks, and that is due to relatively our workload has declined, but it's level, and the work is not heavy actually in the structural arena. It's heavy in the access and fire life safety. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that in our fire life safety reviews, we do have reduced staffing there due to retirements and transfers, et cetera, and we do have heavy workloads, so we are not meeting our goal of 6 weeks, as well as in our access program, which is in our next slide. So here as well, in our Category 3 projects, which are actually the majority of projects, we're heavy in various regions, and we continue to move work around the state to try to shorten the bin time and start reviews sooner. And that's it for DSA updates. I believe next time we'll be presenting will be in February, so if there are any questions, I'll take them now, and if there are any questions between now and February, we can always respond by email and such. I think there's a question back there. Yes? Sorry, Lana, I can't see you from here.
Okay. Do you have any information on the next phase of seismic applications? Do you have you processed, the full structural engineer's report?
We haven't really, we haven't had any applications that have moved to that next phase. We do have some activity, very minor, from applicants that were deemed eligible, their buildings were deemed eligible under the previous version of the regulations. Since the new regulations simply expanded the program, the prior applicants are still eligible, so there's a little bit of activity there. There may be a handful of projects that are doing the Phase 3, the design criteria review for rehab, but that's really fairly minor, so I'm really not kind of wrapping that up in the overall report this month, but it's very minor. So, in fact, and this is kind of interesting, none of the 66 have moved to the next phase yet that we know of. They may be planning it, but nothing's been received at DSA. That's a good question. Anything else? Masha Lutzek, and I'm with the Codes and Standards Unit at DSA headquarters. Okay. All right. All right. Thanks for your time.
Well, this concludes today's Pre-State Allocation Board meeting. Thank you so much for joining us. And just a reminder again, our State Allocation Board is here at the State Capitol at 2 o'clock, room 112. Oh, one more question?
I have one question, actually it's a request, that when, for example, when the I-1 for prior funding was originally issued, it included a total of $9.4.2 million, and then there was a revision to 9.3.8. I'm wondering if there's a chance that OPSC implement a process where they do an email blast so districts know that there was a change in the agenda. Otherwise, it requires going back and checking every item constantly to know if there's been a change.
Oh, great suggestion. Sure, we'll look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for your participation.